What happens when a comedian, known for his sharp political satire, sits down with America's sweetheart talk show host, and the conversation takes a turn nobody saw coming? Well, you're about to find out because Randy Rainbow just had the most explosive interview meltdown in daytime television history. Before we dive into this absolute train wreck, make sure you subscribe and drop a comment below because this story is going to blow your mind. So, there's Randy Rainbow, sitting across from Kelly Clarkson on her vibrant talk show set. The atmosphere starts friendly enough, with Kelly's signature warm smile and Randy's theatrical charm on full display. Kelly kicks things off with what seems like innocent banter. "Randy, your political parodies have become such a phenomenon. But I have to ask, don't you ever worry about going too far with some of your content?" Randy shifts in his chair, his eyebrows raising slightly. "To toe. Far, Kelly, we're living in times where reality has already gone too far. I'm just holding up a mirror to the absurdity. But some people might say that your videos cross lines, especially when you're targeting specific politicians so harshly." The smile on Randy's face begins to fade. "Cross lines, Kelly. Comedy has always been about pushing boundaries. That's literally the point. Are we seriously going to have this conversation right now?" Kelly leans forward, her tone becoming more pointed. "I'm just saying that maybe there's a responsibility that comes with having a platform like yours. Some of your content can be pretty divisive." Divisive? Randy's voice gets a bit sharper. "Kelly, calling out corruption and incompetence isn't divisive. It's necessary. Are you really going to sit there and lecture me about responsibility while you're hosting a show that promotes celebrity gossip and consumer culture?" The audience starts to murmur. Sensing the tension building, Kelly's smile becomes more strained. "I think you're misunderstanding what I'm trying to say here, Randy." "No, I understand perfectly. You invited me on your show to promote my work, and now you're trying to shame me for doing exactly what made me famous in the first place. This is classic mainstream media behavior." Kelly's voice gets slightly defensive. "Randy, I'm not trying to shame anyone. I'm asking legitimate questions that I think my audience would want to know." "Your audience or your network executives?" "Because there's a difference, Kelly, and we both know it." The tension in the studio is now palpable. Kelly tries to regain control of the situation. "Look, Randy, I respect your work. I really do. But don't you think there's value in finding common ground instead of always going for the most provocative angle?" Randy lets out a bitter laugh. "Common ground? Kelly, when one side is literally trying to dismantle democracy and the other side is asking us to find common ground, that's not balance, that's complicity." "That's a pretty extreme way to put it, don't you think?" "Extreme? What's extreme is pretending that both sides of every issue deserve equal consideration when they clearly don't. What's extreme is sitting in your comfortable chair and asking people like me to tone it down while the world burns around us." Kelly's composure starts cracking. "Randy, I think you're being unfair. I'm trying to have a reasonable conversation here." "Reasonable? You want reasonable? Then let's talk about how daytime television has become this sanitized, corporate-approved wasteland where nobody's allowed to say anything real or meaningful because it might upset the advertisers." The audience is now completely silent, watching this verbal sparring match unfold. Kelly tries to redirect. "I think we should probably move on to talking about your upcoming projects." "Oh, now you want to move on. Convenient. You dragged me through this whole interrogation about my responsibility as a content creator. And when I push back, suddenly it's time to change the subject." Kelly's face flushes slightly. "Randy, I wasn't interrogating you. I was asking questions that I thought would lead to an interesting discussion." "Interesting for who?" "Your producers who probably told you to grill me about being too political. Or interesting for your audience who might actually want to hear something authentic for once instead of the usual fluff." The camera captures Kelly, taking a deep breath, clearly trying to maintain her professional demeanor. "Randy, I think you're making assumptions about my motivations that just aren't true, am I? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like I walked into an ambush disguised as a friendly chat. You knew exactly what my content was like when you booked me, so why are we acting surprised that I have opinions?" The conversation has completely derailed from its original trajectory, and both host and guest are now locked in an increasingly heated exchange that's showing no signs of cooling down. Kelly straightens up in her chair, her media training kicking in as she attempts damage control. "Randy, I think there might be a misunderstanding here. My questions come from a place of genuine curiosity, not criticism." "Genuine curiosity?" Randy's voice drips with sarcasm. "Kelly, let me tell you what genuine curiosity looks like. It's asking me about my creative process, my inspirations, my journey as an artist. It's not immediately jumping into whether I'm being too mean to politicians who are actively harming people. But Randy, surely you can understand that when you have millions of followers, people are going to have questions about the impact of your message." "Impact? You want to talk about impact? Let's talk about the impact of normalizing authoritarianism by treating it like it's just another political opinion. Let's talk about the impact of sanitizing real issues so they're palatable for morning television. Kelly's professional smile is starting to crack completely. I don't think that's fair, Randy. We cover serious issues on this show all the time. Do you though? Or do you cover serious issues in the most superficial way possible so you can check a box that says you're socially conscious while never actually challenging your audience to think critically about anything? The studio audience is now completely uncomfortable, with some people shifting in their seats and others pulling out their phones to record this unexpected drama. Randy, I really think you're mischaracterizing what we do here. Am I? Kelly, when was the last time you had a conversation on this show that actually made someone uncomfortable? When was the last time you asked a question that your guest couldn't answer with a pre-rehearsed talking point? Kelly's voice gets sharper. I ask tough questions when they're appropriate. Appropriate, according to who? Your legal team, your network suits, your advertisers. Because I guarantee you, none of those people care about what's actually appropriate for the moment we're living in. Randy, you're being incredibly unfair right now. You don't know anything about how I run my show or what conversations I have. Behind the scenes. Behind the scenes. Kelly, that's exactly the problem. All the real conversations happen behind the scenes while the audience gets fed this manufactured positivity that has nothing to do with reality. Kelly takes a visible deep breath, trying to regain control. Look, Randy, I understand you're passionate about your work, and I respect that. But attacking me personally isn't really productive here. Attacking you personally, Kelly, I'm not. Attacking you as a person. I'm attacking a system that you happen to be a very successful part of. There's a difference. But you're sitting on my show, as my guest, essentially telling me that everything I do is meaningless corporate propaganda. I'm telling you that daytime television has become a vehicle for avoiding real conversations about real problems. If that describes your show, then maybe that's something worth examining. The tension in the room is now thick enough to cut with, and Kelly's producer can be seen frantically gesturing from behind the cameras. Randy, I invited you here because I thought you were funny and talented, not because I wanted to be lectured about the state of media. And I came here because I thought maybe, just maybe, someone in mainstream media actually wanted to have a real conversation about why comedy matters in dark times. Apparently I was wrong. Kelly's voice gets more defensive. Randy, you're making a lot of assumptions about my intentions and my show that just aren't accurate. Then prove me wrong. Kelly, ask me something real. Ask me something that matters. Ask me why I think humor is one of the last defenses we have against fascism instead of asking me to justify my existence as an artist. Fascism. Randy, don't you think that's a pretty extreme word to throw around? Randy's eyes widen in disbelief. And there it is. There's the problem right there. You think the word fascism is extreme, but you don't think the actual policies and behaviors that define fascism are extreme. That's exactly the kind of willful blindness I'm talking about. Randy, I'm not willfully blind to anything. I just think we should be careful about using inflammatory language. Inflammatory. Kelly, what's inflammatory is pretending that calling a spade is somehow worse than the spade itself. What's inflammatory is tone policing people who are trying to sound the alarm while the house is burning down around us. The audience is now completely silent, hanging on every word of this unexpected philosophical battle playing out in real time. Randy, I think you're being unfair to me and to my audience. We care about these issues too. Do you? Because caring about issues and actually addressing them are two completely different things. Caring is easy. It's a feeling. Action requires risk, and risk is bad for ratings. Kelly's professional composure is now visibly strained. Randy, you're essentially saying that everyone in mainstream media is a coward, and I don't think that's fair or accurate. I'm saying that mainstream media operates within constraints that make real courage almost impossible. And yes, that includes this show, and yes, that includes this conversation we're having right now. Kelly's face hardens as she processes Randy's words. So what you're saying is that this conversation, right now, is somehow fake or meaningless because it's happening on my show. What I'm saying is that we're having this conversation within a framework that's designed to prevent it from going anywhere that might actually matter. We're performing authenticity instead of actually being authentic. Performing authenticity, Randy, I'm being completely genuine with you right now. Are you? Because genuine Kelly would probably have some real opinions about the state of the world. But talk show host Kelly has to stay neutral and palatable and brand safe. Which Kelly am I talking to right now? The question hangs in the air like a challenge. Kelly's jaw tightens. You know what? Randy, you're right. Let me be genuine with you. I think you're being incredibly arrogant right now. You waltz onto my show and immediately start attacking everything about it without knowing anything about me or what I actually believe. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. Tell me what you actually believe, Kelly. Not what your network wants you to believe, not what your audience wants to hear. What do you actually think about the world we're living in? Kelly pauses, clearly wrestling with how much to reveal. I think the world is complicated. Randy, I think reducing everything to good guys and bad guys makes for good comedy, but it's not helpful for actually solving problems. Complicated. Kelly, some things aren't complicated. Some things are actually pretty simple. When someone tries to overthrow an election, that's not complicated. When someone puts kids in cages, that's not complicated. When someone lies every time they open their mouth, that's not complicated. But Randy, don't you think that kind of black and white thinking is exactly what's dividing this country? Randy looks genuinely stunned. Are you serious right now? You think the problem is that people like me are too judgmental about objectively terrible behavior. You think the solution is to be more understanding of cruelty and corruption. I think the solution is to find ways to bring people together. Instead of driving them further apart, bring people together. Kelly, you can't bring people together with fascists. You can't find middle ground with people who want to eliminate your neighbor's rights to exist. This isn't a disagreement about tax policy. This is a disagreement about basic human dignity. Kelly's voice gets louder. And that's exactly the kind of rhetoric that makes it impossible to have productive conversations with anyone who doesn't already agree with you. Productive conversations. Kelly, what exactly would a productive conversation with someone who thinks certain groups of people shouldn't have rights look like? Please, enlighten me. It would look like trying to understand where they're coming from instead of immediately writing them off as evil. Randy stares at her in disbelief. Understand where they're coming from. Kelly, I understand perfectly where they're coming from. They're coming from a place of fear and hatred and ignorance. Understanding that doesn't mean I have to respect it or accommodate it. But Randy, don't you think that attitude just perpetuates the cycle of division? No, Kelly. What perpetuates the cycle of division is pretending that hatred and love are just two different but equally valid perspectives. What perpetuates division is false equivalency and both sidesism and the kind of moral relativism you're advocating for right now. The studio is now dead silent, except for the occasional uncomfortable cough from the audience. Randy, I'm not advocating for moral relativism. I'm advocating for basic human decency and trying to find common ground. Human decency. Kelly, human decency means standing up to bullies, not trying to understand them. Human decency means protecting vulnerable people, not finding compromise with their oppressors. Kelly's professional mask is completely gone now. Randy, you're putting words in my mouth and creating positions I never took. Am I? Because it sounds to me like you're more concerned with being polite to fascists than you are with protecting the people they want to hurt. That's not what I said, and you know it. Then what are you saying, Kelly? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're asking me to tone down my criticism of dangerous people because it might hurt their feelings or make your show seem too political. I'm saying that maybe your approach isn't as effective as you think it is. Randy's eyes flash with anger. Effective. Kelly, my approach has reached millions of people and helped them process the trauma of living through the worst political era in modern American history. What has your approach accomplished besides keeping everyone comfortable while everything falls apart? My approach has brought joy and positivity to people during difficult times. Joy and positivity. Kelly, there's a difference between bringing joy and enabling denial. There's a difference between positivity and toxic optimism. Kelly stands up abruptly, her voice rising. Randy, I think you need to check yourself here. You're being incredibly disrespectful to me, to my show, and to my audience. Randy also stands, matching her energy. The studio lights seem to intensify the heat of the moment as both host and guest face off across the coffee table. Kelly's voice trembles with barely contained frustration. Centrist nonsense. Randy, you don't even know what I believe personally. You're making sweeping judgments about me based on absolutely nothing. I'm making judgments based on exactly what you've shown me in the last 10 minutes. Kelly, you've spent this entire conversation trying to get me to apologize for having strong convictions about right and wrong. I haven't asked you to apologize for anything. I've asked you to consider that maybe your way isn't the only way to create positive change. Randy throws his hands up in exasperation. Positive change. Kelly, positive change requires acknowledging when things are wrong, not finding ways to make everyone feel better about terrible situations. And you think insulting and mocking people is going to make them suddenly see the light. I think holding people accountable for their actions is more important than protecting their feelings. I think truth matters more than comfort. Kelly's voice gets sharper. Truth, Randy, your truth, your perspective, your interpretation of events. But you present it like it's the only possible way to see things. When it comes to basic human rights and democratic principles, yes, there is only one acceptable way to see things. This isn't a matter of opinion. Kelly, everything is a matter of opinion. Randy, that's what living in a democracy means. Randy stares at her incredulously. No, Kelly, everything is not a matter of opinion. The earth is round, gravity exists, and trying to overturn elections is wrong. These aren't opinions, they're facts. But how you respond to those facts, how you talk about them, how you treat people who disagree with you, Those are choices. And I choose to respond with the urgency that the situation demands, instead of pretending everything is fine. Kelly shakes her head vigorously. Randy, nobody's pretending everything is fine, but screaming at people isn't solving anything. I'm not screaming at people, Kelly. I'm using humor and satire to point out absurdity and corruption. If that feels like screaming to you, maybe you should ask yourself why. Because it's aggressive and divisive, and it pushes people away instead of bringing them in. Randy's voice rises. Good. Some people should be pushed away. Some people shouldn't be brought in. Not every perspective deserves a seat at the table. Kelly, see? That's exactly what I'm talking about. That kind of absolutist thinking is dangerous. Dangerous. You know what's dangerous? Giving platforms to people who spread misinformation and hate while tone policing the people who call them out on it. Kelly points her finger at Randy. And you know what's also dangerous? Creating content that makes people angrier and more divided instead of helping them find solutions. Solutions, Kelly? The solution is for good people to stop being polite to bad people. The solution is for people with platforms like yours to stop pretending that neutrality is a virtue. When one side wants to destroy democracy. Randy, you're completely twisting everything I'm saying. No, I'm hearing exactly what you're saying. You're saying that my comedy is problematic because it takes sides. You're saying that standing up to authoritarianism is divisive. You're saying that calling out corruption is inflammatory. Kelly's face is now flushed with anger. I never said any of those things. You absolutely did. You've spent this entire interview concerned trolling me about my tone and my approach, while completely ignoring the substance of what I'm trying to accomplish. Concerned trolling. Randy, I was trying to have a thoughtful discussion about the role of political comedy in our culture. No, you were trying to get me to admit that. I'm part of the problem so you could feel better about your own complicity in the system. Kelly's voice cracks slightly. My complicity, Randy, you don't know anything about my life or my values or what I do when the cameras aren't rolling. I know what you do when the cameras are rolling, and that's what matters. I know that you use your platform to promote safe, sanitized content that never challenges anyone to think differently about anything important. That's not true, and it's incredibly unfair. Randy starts gathering his things. You know what's unfair, Kelly? What's unfair is living in a country where comedians have to be the ones telling the truth because journalists won't do it and talk show hosts won't do it. Randy, where are you going? I'm leaving. This conversation has made it crystal clear that we live in completely different realities, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that your reality is equally valid. Kelly's voice becomes desperate. Randy, please don't leave. We can find a way to have this conversation constructively. Randy stops and turns back to face her, constructively. Kelly, construction requires a foundation. We don't even agree on basic facts about the world we're living in. How exactly are we supposed to build anything on that? By listening to each other and trying to understand different perspectives. I've been listening, Kelly. I've heard you loud and clear. You think I'm too angry, too divisive, too unwilling to compromise with people who want to harm others. Message received. Randy, that's not what I think. Then what do you think, Kelly? What do you actually, genuinely think about the state of the world right now? Not what you think your audience wants to hear. Not what you think is appropriate. What do you actually think? Kelly hesitates, the question hanging between them like a final challenge. The silence stretches uncomfortably as cameras capture every moment of her internal struggle. Finally, she speaks, but her voice lacks conviction. I think we need to find ways to heal the divisions in our country. Randy shakes his head sadly. That's not an answer, Kelly. That's a talking point. And the fact that you can't give me a real answer proves everything I've been saying. With that, Randy turns toward the exit, leaving Kelly standing alone on her own set as the audience watches in stunned silence. The cameras continue rolling, capturing every second of the most dramatic walk-off in daytime television history. So, there you have it, the explosive confrontation that nobody saw coming. What do you think went wrong here? Was Randy right to call out Kelly's approach, or did he go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and make sure to subscribe. For more